Lila's lungs burned, but stopping meant surrender, and she'd die before she surrendered. The forest floor bit into her bare feet, pine needles and stones sharp enough to draw blood. She didn't care. Pain was better than what waited behind her. The moon ceremony fires still glowed somewhere in the distance, their smoke thick in the pre-dawn air. She could almost hear the murmurs of the pack, the shock that had rippled through them 3 nights ago when she'd spoken the words no one ever spoke. I reject this bond. Her chest tightened at the memory. Alpha King Kale had stood before her on the ceremonial platform, his hand extended, his golden eyes steady and unreadable. The entire pack had watched, waited, and she'd turned her back on him. She stumbled over a root and caught herself against a tree, gasping. Her white ceremonial dress was torn at the hem, streaked with dirt and moss. The fabric clung to her legs, heavy with dew. She should have changed, should have planned this better. But when she'd woken an hour ago in the Luna's chamber, the walls had closed in. The silk sheets, the gold circlet they'd left on the pillow beside her, the scent of him still lingering in the air, faint but unmistakable. Cedar and smoke and something wild she couldn't name. The bond had pulled at her ribs like a rope, and she'd known, if she didn't run now, she never would. A low growl echoed through the trees behind her. Lila's heart slammed against her chest. She pushed off the trunk and ran harder, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The stream. If she could reach the stream, the water might mask her scent long enough to... Who was she kidding? Kale was the Alpha King. He'd tracked prey across entire territories. She was barefoot and exhausted, and her scent was probably screaming through the forest like a beacon. Still, she ran. The trees began to thin ahead, and she heard it. Water rushing over stone. Relief flooded her for half a second before the growl came again, closer this time. Not behind her, in front of her. Lila skidded to a halt at the edge of the stream, her toes inches from the cold water. Her pulse roared in her ears. Kale stepped out from between 2 massive pines on the opposite bank. He was still in his ceremonial clothes, black linen and leather, but his shirt hung open and his feet were bare like hers. His dark hair was disheveled, his jaw tight, and his eyes. They glowed faint gold in the dim light, the wolf rising just beneath the surface. Lila took a step back. Don't. His voice was low, controlled, but the command in it made her freeze anyway. She hated that her body responded before her mind could catch up. "I'm not one of your soldiers," she said, her voice sharper than she felt. Kale's jaw tightened, but he didn't move closer. "I know." "Then stop using your alpha voice on me." "I wasn't." He took a breath, and the glow in his eyes dimmed slightly. "I'm asking. Don't run again. Not yet." Lila's hands curled into fists at her sides. Her heart still hammered, but it wasn't just fear anymore. It was something hotter, something that twisted low in her stomach and made her want to scream. The bond. She could feel it even now, pulling at her chest, whispering that he was close, that he was hers, that she should cross the stream and let him. "No. I don't owe you an explanation," she said. "I'm not asking for one." Kale stepped into the water, the current swirling around his ankles. "I'm asking why you're running now. The ceremony was 3 nights ago. You've been in the Luna's chamber since then. Why leave before sunrise?" "Because I felt you in my dreams." The thought burned through her mind before she could stop it, and from the way his eyes flared, she knew he'd caught the scent of her panic. "That's not fair," she whispered. "What isn't?" "You can smell everything I feel, hear my heartbeat, track me across miles of forest." Her voice cracked, and she hated the sound of it. I have nothing, no power, no choice. Kale went very still. The water rushed between them, cold and indifferent. You had a choice 3 nights ago, he said quietly. You made it, and you didn't accept it. I did, Lila blinked. What? I called off the ceremony the moment you left the platform. He took another step forward, the water now halfway up his calves. I sent the pack home, told the elders the bond would not be forced. She stared at him, her breath caught somewhere between her throat and her chest. Then why? Because you ran again. His voice was still calm, but there was something raw beneath it now, something that made her ribs ache. Before I could ask if you were rejecting me or rejecting what you thought I'd make you become. Lila's throat tightened. The question hung in the air between them, sharp and unavoidable. Does it matter? She whispered. Yes. The word was so certain, so absolute that it cracked something inside her. She sank down onto the wet stones at the water's edge, her legs finally giving out. Her dress pooled around her, heavy and cold. She wrapped her arms around her knees and stared at the stream. I watched my mother's bond break her, she said, her voice barely audible over the water. She was strong before she met my father, a warrior. But after the bond, she became his shadow, and when he died, she had nothing left. Not even herself. Kale didn't speak, didn't move. Lila forced herself to look up at him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, they weren't glowing anymore. They were just dark and steady and fixed on her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I won't become that, she said. I can't. I'm not asking you to. You don't have to ask. The bond will do it for you. No. He crossed the stream in 2 strides and crouched in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his skin, close enough that the bond pulled so hard she had to dig her nails into her palms to keep from reaching for him. The bond doesn't erase you, Layla. It's not supposed to. You don't know that. I do. His voice dropped, rough and quiet. Because I've been fighting it for 3 days. Fighting the instinct to drag you back, to mark you, to make you mine in every way the wolf demands. And I'm still here, still asking, still waiting. Her breath hitched. Why? Because forcing you would break me too. The words hit her like a blow, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Kale's hand hovered near hers, not quite touching. So tell me, are you running from me, or from what you're afraid I'll take from you? Lila opened her mouth to answer, but the sound that cut through the forest wasn't hers. It was a howl, low and vicious and close. Kale's head snapped up, his entire body going rigid. His eyes flared gold again, brighter this time, and a growl rumbled deep in his chest. Rogues, he said, his voice flat and deadly. From the north. Lila's stomach dropped. How many? Enough. He rose to his feet, his gaze scanning the tree line. And they're coming fast. Lila's pulse hammered in her ears. She scrambled to her feet, the wet fabric of her dress clinging to her legs. The howl came again. Closer. Kale moved before she could speak, placing himself between her and the sound. His shoulders rolled back, and she heard the crack and shift of bone beneath skin. Not a full transformation, just enough. His hands lengthened into claws. His canines dropped. The air around him shimmered with restrained power. Stay behind me, he said. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him she could defend herself, that she'd trained with the pack's warriors since she was old enough to hold a blade. But her weapons were back at the ceremonial grounds, and her legs were still shaking from the run, so she nodded. The first rogue broke through the tree line 30 yards out. A gray wolf, scarred and lean, with eyes that glowed the sickly yellow of a broken bond. 2 more followed. then a fourth. They fanned out in a half circle, cutting off the path back to pack territory. Kale didn't flinch. "You're trespassing," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Leave now, and I'll let you live." The gray wolf shifted, not fully, just enough to speak. His voice was rough, guttural. "We smelled her," unclaimed Luna. "That makes her fair game." Lila's breath caught. She'd heard the stories. Rogues who hunted unmated females, hoping to force a bond and claim pack status through violence. It was rare, brutal, and almost always fatal. Kale's growl deepened, vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. "She's not unclaimed." "She ran from you at the ceremony," the rogue said, baring his teeth in something that might have been a grin. "The whole territory heard about it. She rejected you, Alpha King. That makes her open." "No," Kale's claws flexed. "It doesn't." The gray wolf laughed, low and rasping. "Then prove it. Mark her. Right here. Right now." Kale went very still. Lila felt the weight of the moment settle over her like a stone. This was the trap. If Kale marked her without her consent, he'd be everything she feared. If he didn't, the rogues would take her by force. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. "I'm not a prize," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "And I don't belong to any of you." The gray wolf's gaze shifted to her. His eyes raked over her, slow and deliberate, and she felt the urge to shrink back. But she didn't. "Bold," he said. "I like that." Kale moved so fast she barely saw it. One moment he was standing in front of her. The next he had the gray wolf by the throat, claws digging into fur and flesh. "Touch her," Kale said, his voice dropping into something inhuman, "and I'll tear you apart so slowly you'll beg for death." The other three rogues lunged. Lila didn't think. She dropped low, grabbed a stone from the stream bed, and hurled it at the nearest wolf. It hit him square in the jaw, and he yelped, stumbling. Kale threw the gray wolf into a tree with enough force to crack the trunk. The rogue hit the ground and didn't get up, but the other two were already on him. Kale twisted, catching one by the scruff and slamming him into the dirt. The second rogue went for his throat, fangs bared, and Lila's heart stopped. She grabbed another stone, bigger this time, heavier. She swung it with everything she had. It connected with the rogue's skull, and he dropped like a stone. Kale's eyes snapped to hers. For a heartbeat, he just stared, his chest heaving, blood streaking his arms. Then he smiled. It was brief. Fleeting. But it was there. The last rogue turned and bolted into the trees. The gray wolf dragged himself upright, limping, and followed without a word. Silence fell over the clearing. Kale's claws retracted slowly, the shift reversing itself with a series of sickening cracks. He winced, his hand going to his ribs, and Lila saw the blood seeping through his shirt. "You're hurt," she said. "I'm fine. You're bleeding. I've had worse." She crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and grabbed his wrist. "Let me see." He pulled back, not hard, but enough to stop her. "Lila, let me see." His jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he exhaled, slow and deliberate, and lifted the edge of his shirt. The wound was deep, 3 parallel gashes across his ribs, still weeping blood. Claw marks. Her stomach twisted. "You need a healer." "It'll close on its own." "Not fast enough." "I'm not leaving you out here alone." "Then I'm coming with you." He blinked. "What?" "You heard me." She tore a strip of fabric from the hem of her dress and pressed it against the wound. He hissed, but he didn't pull away. There's a cave, just past the ridge. I used to hide there when I was young. Lila, unless you'd rather bleed out in front of me while we argue. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. You're stubborn. You're welcome. He let her wrap the makeshift bandage around his ribs, his breathing shallow and controlled. When she tied it off, her fingers brushed his skin, and the bond flared so hot she gasped. Cale went still. His hand came up, hovering near her cheek, not quite touching. You stayed, he said quietly. I threw a rock. You could have run. So could you. His eyes searched hers. I told you. I'm not going anywhere. She wanted to say something. Wanted to tell him she was still afraid, still unsure, still running from herself more than him. But the words stuck in her throat. So instead, she stepped back, breaking the contact, and nodded toward the ridge. Come on, she said, before those rogues come back with friends. Cale followed without a word. The cave was smaller than she remembered. Lila ducked through the opening first, her bare feet silent on the cool stone. The air inside was damp and still, carrying the faint mineral smell of earth and moss. Filtered dawn light crept in behind them, just enough to see by. Cale followed, moving carefully, one hand pressed against the bandage. His breathing was too shallow. She pointed to a flat rock near the back wall. Sit. He obeyed without argument, which told her more about his condition than any words could. She knelt beside him, her hands already reaching for the torn fabric she'd tied around his ribs. The blood had soaked through completely. This needs to be cleaned, she said. It'll heal. Not if it gets infected. Shifters don't. Don't argue with me. His mouth closed. For a moment, he just looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then he nodded. She unwrapped the bandage slowly, careful not to pull at the edges of the wound. The gashes were deeper than she'd thought. 3 clean lines carved through muscle, dark and angry against his skin. Her stomach turned, but she forced herself to focus. There was a small stream at the mouth of the cave, barely more than a trickle running down the rock face. She tore another strip from her dress and soaked it in the cold water, then returned to his side. This might hurt, she said quietly. I know. She pressed the wet fabric against the wound. He hissed through his teeth, his whole body going rigid, but he didn't pull away. She worked in silence, cleaning the blood as gently as she could. His skin was warm under her hands, warmer than it should be. The bond hummed between them, a low, constant ache that made her breath catch every time her fingers brushed bare skin. When she finished, she sat back on her heels, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you, Cale said. She didn't look at him. You shouldn't have done that. Which part? Any of it. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. You shouldn't have tracked me. You shouldn't have followed me into the forest. You shouldn't have fought them alone. I wasn't alone. 1 rock doesn't count. It does to me. She finally met his eyes. The gold was still there, faint but present, like embers banked low. He looked tired, more tired than she'd ever seen him, and something in her chest cracked open. Why? The word came out raw. Why do you keep doing this? Doing what? Trying to save me. His jaw tightened. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he exhaled, slow and deliberate, and leaned his head back against the stone wall. Do you remember the first time we met? He asked quietly. She frowned. The moon ceremony. No, he shook his head. Before that, you were 13, maybe 14. Her breath caught. You were sitting by the river, he continued, his voice soft. Alone. Crying. I asked if you were all right, and you told me to leave you alone. The memory surfaced, distant, and hazy. She'd been so angry that day, so lost. "I didn't know who you were," she said. "I know." He smiled faintly. "You called me an overgrown puppy." Despite everything, her lips twitched. "You were." "Probably." He paused. "You asked me if I believed in the mate bond." Her throat tightened. "I told you I didn't know," Cale said. "I told you I'd never felt it. But you looked at me like I'd just confirmed your worst fear. And you said," he trailed off, his eyes distant. "You said your mother told you it was a trap, that it made you weak, that once someone had your bond, they owned you." Lila's hands clenched in her lap. "I didn't understand then," he continued. "I thought you were just scared of something you didn't know yet. But later, I heard the stories. About your mother. About what happened when your father's bond broke." She flinched. "She withered," Lila said quietly. "For 2 years. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She'd sit by the window every night waiting for him to come back, even though everyone knew he was gone. And when she finally died, the healers said it was her heart. But I knew," her voice cracked. "I knew it was the bond. It killed her." Cale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something that looked like pain. "And then I felt it," Lila continued, the words spilling out now, unstoppable. "3 nights ago, at the ceremony, I looked at you and it was like something snapped into place inside me. Something I didn't choose. Something I couldn't control. And all I could think was that I was going to end up just like her. Broken, hollow, waiting for someone who might leave." Her hands were shaking. "So I ran," she whispered. "Because I thought if I ran far enough, fast enough, I could outrun it. Outrun you, outrun what I felt." Silence settled between them, heavy and complete. Then Cale shifted forward, his hand reaching out slowly, carefully, until his fingers brushed hers. "I called off the ceremony," he said quietly. She blinked. "What?" "The moment you fled. I told the pack it was over. No bond, no claim, nothing." Her heart stuttered. You can't do that. The elders." "I'm the Alpha King." His voice was steady, certain. "I can do whatever I want. And I chose you. But I chose your freedom over the bond." He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "I've been fighting it for 3 days, Lila. Fighting the pull. Fighting the need to find you, to claim you, to make you mine. Because I knew if I forced it, if I used the bond to bring you back, I'd be proving you right. I'd be the trap you always feared." Her breath caught. "But I couldn't let you go," he continued, his voice dropping to barely more than a whisper. "Not without knowing if there was any part of you that wanted this. Wanted me. Not the bond. Not the title. Just me." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "I don't know how to trust this," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to let someone in without giving them the power to destroy me." "Then don't." His thumb brushed over her knuckles, so gentle it made her chest ache. "Don't give me that power. Keep it. Hold on to it. Run if you need to. Fight me if you have to. But don't run from yourself." "What if I can't stop running?" "Then I'll wait." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." She stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The bond hummed between them, insistent and undeniable, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a chain. It felt like a choice. "I stayed," she said quietly, "back there, when the rogues came. I could have run, but I stayed." "I know. That has to mean something. It means everything." She took a shaky breath. "I'm still afraid." "I know," he said again. but I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to." The first real sunlight broke through the cave opening, painting the walls in soft gold. Lila looked down at their joined hands, at the way his fingers curled around hers like he was afraid she'd disappear. And slowly, carefully, she squeezed back. The stillness of the cave broke first with the sound of rustling leaves outside. Cale's head snapped toward the entrance, his entire body going rigid. His eyes flared gold, brighter than before, and the warmth of his hand around hers turned into something tense and dangerous. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice stripped of all softness. Lila's pulse kicked into overdrive. "What is it?" "Company." He was on his feet before she could blink, moving between her and the cave mouth with the fluid precision of a predator. His shoulders rolled back, muscles coiling beneath his shirt, and she could see the shift beginning, even though he hadn't fully given into it yet. His canines lengthened. His nails darkened into claws. She scrambled upright, her heart hammering against her ribs. Rogues? 3 of them. His voice had dropped an octave, rough and growling. "Maybe more. They caught your scent." Her stomach twisted. "My scent?" "An unclaimed Luna." His jaw tightened. "To them, you're a prize." The words hit her like a slap. She'd spent 3 days running from the bond, from the ceremony, from everything that came with being marked as Cale's mate. And now the very thing she'd been fleeing had painted a target on her back. "I should have let you mark me," she whispered. "No." The word was a command, sharp and absolute. "Don't say that. Don't ever say that." "But if I had, then it wouldn't have been your choice." He glanced back at her, his glowing eyes fierce. "I won't have you bound to me out of fear. Not now. Not ever." A low, taunting howl echoed from the trees outside, closer than before. It was answered by another, then another, the sound weaving through the dawn light like a promise of violence. Lila's hands curled into fists. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to bolt through the back of the cave, to disappear into the forest, to do what she'd always done when the world got too dangerous. But Cale was still standing between her and the entrance, his body a living barrier, and she knew without asking that he wouldn't leave. Not even to chase her, not even to save himself. He would fight, and he would die doing it if she ran. The realization settled over her like ice water. "How many can you take?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. He shot her a look, surprise flickering across his face. "All of them if I have to." "That's not what I asked." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. 3, maybe 4, depends on how smart they are. "And if there are more?" Then it gets interesting. Another howl, so close now she could feel it vibrate in her chest. Shadows moved outside the cave, circling, testing, waiting. Lila took a breath. Then another. Her bare feet grounded against the stone floor, her body remembering every lesson her mother had taught her before the bond broke her, before fear became the only thing left. She wasn't her mother. She wasn't broken yet. And she wasn't running. "I'm staying," she said. Cale went utterly still. "Lila, I'm staying," she repeated, stepping up beside him. "You don't get to do this alone. You're not a fighter." "I'm fast." She met his eyes, refusing to back down. "And I know these woods better than they do. If it goes bad, I can draw them off. Give you time." "Absolutely not." "You don't get to order me around, remember?" Her voice sharpened. "You said I had a choice. This is it. I'm choosing to stay." His jaw worked, fury, and something deeper warring in his expression. For a moment, she thought he might argue. might try to force her back into the corner of the cave and stand guard like she was something fragile. But then his hand found hers, just for a heartbeat, and he squeezed once. Hard. "Stay close," he said, "and if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. No promises." He exhaled sharply, somewhere between exasperation and pride. "Stubborn. You have no idea." The first rogue stepped into the mouth of the cave, and all the warmth drained from the air. He was larger than Kale, his frame twisted and scarred from too many fights and not enough pack structure to hold him together. His eyes glowed amber, feral and hungry, and when he smiled his teeth were stained and sharp. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice like gravel scraping bone. "The Alpha King himself, and the little rabbit who got away." Two more rogues appeared behind him, flanking him on either side. One was lean and wiry, all coiled energy and twitching fingers. The other was broad and silent, his gaze fixed on Lila with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Kale's growl rumbled low in his chest, a sound that vibrated through the stone beneath her feet. "Leave, now, and I'll let you live." The lead rogue laughed. "You're in no position to make threats, King. You're hurt, outnumbered. And she—" His eyes slid to Lila, lingering in a way that made her stomach turn. "She's unclaimed, free for the taking." "Touch her," Kale said softly, "and I'll rip your throat out before you draw your next breath." The rogue's smile widened. Big words for a dying bond. He lunged. Kale met him halfway, the impact shaking the cave walls. Claws tore through fabric and flesh, teeth snapping inches from throats, and the space erupted into chaos. The wiry rogue darted toward Lila, too fast, and she barely had time to throw herself sideways before his claws raked the air where her head had been. She rolled, her bare feet finding purchase on the uneven ground, and spun toward the cave entrance. The third rogue blocked her path, silent and enormous, and his hand shot out to grab her arm. She twisted, driving her elbow into his ribs with everything she had. He grunted, more surprised than hurt, and his grip loosened just enough for her to wrench free. "Lila!" Kale's voice, raw and desperate, cut through the snarling chaos. She didn't look back. Couldn't. The wiry rogue was coming at her again, teeth bared, and she did the only thing she could think of. She ran. Not away from the cave, not into the forest, but toward Kale, ducking under the silent rogue's grasping hands and throwing herself between Kale and the lead rogue's next strike. The blow never landed. Kale caught her, spinning her behind him in one fluid motion, and his claws tore through the lead rogue's shoulder with a sickening crunch. The rogue howled, stumbling back, blood spraying across the stone. "I told you to stay close." Kale bit out, his voice rough and furious and relieved all at once. "I was close," she shot back. The wiry rogue lunged again. Kale shoved Lila toward the back of the cave and met him head-on, faster than anything human had a right to be. The crack of bone echoed through the space, and the rogue dropped, unconscious or dead, she couldn't tell. The silent one was still advancing, slow and deliberate, and Lila's back hit the cave wall. She had nowhere left to go. Kale stepped between them, his chest heaving, blood streaking down his arm from the reopened wound. His eyes burned gold, feral and absolute, and when he spoke his voice was barely human. "Last chance," he said. "Leave, or die here." The lead rogue spat blood onto the ground, clutching his mangled shoulder. For a long, tense moment, the only sound was the ragged breathing of wounded men. Then he jerked his head toward the silent rogue, and they backed toward the entrance, step by slow step. "This isn't over," the lead rogue snarled. "Yes," Kale said quietly. "It is." They disappeared into the trees. Lila's legs gave out, and she slid down the wall, her whole body shaking. Cale turned, his eyes still glowing, still wild, and dropped to his knees in front of her. "You're insane," he said, his voice hoarse. "You're welcome," she whispered. Cale's breathing slowed, but his hand stayed pressed tight to the gash on his forearm, blood seeping between his fingers. The glow faded from his eyes, leaving only exhaustion and something raw she couldn't name. Lila pushed herself off the wall, her legs still trembling. "Let me see it." "It's nothing." "You're bleeding all over the floor," she said, moving toward him. "That's not nothing." He pulled his arm closer to his chest, protective and stubborn. "I've had worse." "I don't care," she said, dropping to her knees beside him. "Show me." For a moment, he just stared at her, like he couldn't quite believe she was still here. Then, slowly, he lowered his arm and peeled his hand away from the wound. It was deep, deeper than she'd thought. The torn edges of flesh were already trying to knit themselves back together, but too slowly, and fresh blood welled up with every breath. She swore under her breath, "You need stitches. I'll heal." Not fast enough. She stood, scanning the cave for anything useful. Her borrowed cloak lay crumpled near the entrance, and she grabbed it, tearing a strip from the hem. "Hold still." "Lila." "Hold still." He went quiet, watching her as she knelt again and pressed the fabric against the wound. He flinched, just barely, and she gentled her grip without thinking. "Sorry," she murmured. "Don't be." His voice was rough. "You shouldn't be doing this." "You got hurt protecting me," she said, wrapping the makeshift bandage around his forearm with quick, careful movements. "So yes, I should." He didn't argue, just sat there, too close and too still, his gaze heavy on her face. She could feel the heat radiating off him, the tension coiled in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened every time her fingers brushed his skin. She tied off the bandage and sat back on her heels, her hands still shaking. "That'll hold until we get back." "Thank you." She nodded, unable to look at him. The quiet stretched between them, fragile and charged, and she was suddenly very aware that they were alone. That the sun was rising outside and the danger had passed, and there was nothing left to distract her from the truth she'd been running from since the moment he found her at the stream. "Why did you do it?" His voice was barely above a whisper. She looked up. "Do what?" "Step between us." His eyes were dark now, human, but no less intense. "You could have run. You should have." "I couldn't." "Why?" The answer stuck in her throat, too honest, and too terrifying to say out loud. But he was watching her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, and the bond hummed between them, insistent and undeniable. "Because I didn't want you to get hurt," she said quietly. Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe. Or hope. "Even though you hate what I am, I don't hate what you are." She swallowed hard. "I hate what the bond makes me feel." "And what does it make you feel?" "Scared." The word came out small and broken. "Like I'm losing myself. Like I'll disappear into you and forget who I was before." He leaned forward, slow and deliberate, and his good hand came up to rest against the cave floor beside her knee. Not touching, just close. "I don't want you to disappear." "Then what do you want?" "To know if any part of you wants this." His voice cracked on the last word. "Not the bond, not the pack, just me." She closed her eyes, her chest aching. "I've been running from myself." "Not you." When she opened them again, he was closer, his forehead almost touching hers. "What does that mean?" It means I feel it too, she whispered. The pull, the bond. And it terrifies me because I don't know how to want something this much and still stay whole. You will. His breath ghosted over her lips. I promise you will. How can you be sure? Because I've been fighting the same thing, he said, his voice raw. Since the moment I scented you. Every instinct I have says claim you, keep you, never let you out of my sight. But I can't do that. Won't. Because forcing you would destroy the only thing I care about, which is you. He lifted his hand, hesitating, and when she didn't pull away, he brushed his knuckles against her cheek. Not the Luna, not the bond, just you. Stubborn and brave, and so damn terrified you'd rather run through a forest barefoot than let anyone see it. Her throat tightened. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. His thumb traced the edge of her jaw, featherlight. But I know I can't let you go without asking. Will you let me try? Try what? To court you. A wry smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Properly. Like you deserve. No commands, no expectations. Just time. However much you need. She stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. What if I never stop being afraid? Then I'll wait anyway. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair. He leaned closer, his forehead finally resting against hers, and the bond flared between them, warm and aching and right. All I'm asking is a chance. One real chance to show you I'm not your mother's mistake. That this doesn't have to end in breaking. Tears burned behind her eyes. And if I say yes, what changes? Everything, he murmured. And nothing. You're still free, still yours. But I get to prove I'm worth the risk. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. No commands? No commands? No claiming me in front of the pack until I'm ready? Not until you ask me to. And if I never ask? His smile was sad and soft and devastatingly honest. Then I'll spend the rest of my life grateful I got to know you at all. She kissed him. It wasn't planned. Wasn't even fully conscious. But her hands came up to frame his face, and she closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. Desperate and clumsy and exactly what she needed. He froze for half a heartbeat. Then his good arm came around her waist, careful and sure, and he kissed her back like she was air, and he'd been drowning. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft. It was raw and aching and full of everything they'd been too afraid to say, and when they finally broke apart, gasping, his eyes were bright and fierce. Is that a yes? He asked, his voice wrecked. She laughed, shaky and breathless. It's a maybe. I'll take it. He kissed her forehead, lingering, and the bond settled between them like a promise neither of them had words for yet. Outside, the sun crusted the horizon, spilling pale gold light across the forest floor. Lila pulled back, her fingers still tangled in his shirt. We should go back. Not yet. He caught her hand, threading his fingers through hers. One more minute. She didn't argue, just leaned into him, her head against his shoulder, and let herself feel the warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart, the certainty that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to run anymore. When they finally stood, his hand stayed in hers. And when they walked out of the cave together, the bond, humming quiet and sure between them, she didn't let go. The walk back through the forest was quieter than Lila expected. No ceremonial drums echoed in the distance. No pack runners came crashing through the underbrush to find them. Just birdsong and the soft crunch of leaves under their boots, and Kale's hand steady around hers like an anchor she hadn't known she needed. She glanced at him as they moved. His jaw was tight, his breathing still a little shallow from the wound, but he didn't slow, didn't let go. "You're hurting," she said quietly. "I'm fine." Liar. He huffed a soft laugh. "All right, I'm managing." She squeezed his hand. "That's not the same thing." "Close enough." They reached the edge of the forest, just as the sun cleared the treetops, casting long golden light across the clearing where the packlands began. Lila could see the lodges in the distance, smoke rising from morning fires, and her stomach twisted. "They're going to ask questions," she said. "Let them." "Cale." He stopped, turning to face her, and his eyes were warm and sure. "They'll ask, and I'll tell them the truth, that you needed time, that I gave it, that we're figuring this out together. What if they don't accept that? Then they'll deal with me." His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "You're not facing them alone. Not today. Not ever." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that it could be that simple. But the memory of 3 nights ago still burned. The ceremony. The crowd. His voice cutting through the silence, calling her name in front of everyone, and the weight of expectation pressing down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. She'd run then, fled barefoot into the trees while the pack murmured behind her and Cale stood frozen at the altar, his hand still outstretched. "I humiliated you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Cale's brow furrowed. "What?" "3 nights ago, at the ceremony, She swallowed hard. "I embarrassed you in front of everyone, made you look weak." He stepped closer, his free hand lifting to cup her jaw, gentle and grounding. "You didn't." "I ran. You protected yourself." His voice was firm, no room for argument. "That's not weakness. That's strength." "The pack doesn't see it that way." "Then I'll make them see it." He leaned in, his forehead brushing hers. "You didn't humiliate me, Lila. You woke me up. Made me realize I was doing exactly what you feared. Claiming you without asking. Taking instead of earning." Her throat tightened. "I should have talked to you before, instead of just, you tried." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I didn't listen. I was so sure the bond was enough. That destiny meant you'd just fall into place. And now? Now I know better." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "The bond's real. I feel it every second. But it doesn't mean anything if you don't want it to." She closed her eyes, letting his words settle. "I do want it. That's what scares me." "Then let's be scared together." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "That's a terrible plan. Best I've got." She laughed, soft and shaky, and opened her eyes. "Okay? Okay?" "Yeah." She took a breath. "Let's go back. Together." His smile was brighter than the sunrise. They crossed the clearing, hand in hand, and by the time they reached the first lodge, a small crowd had gathered. Whispers rippled through the group, curious and cautious, and Lila felt the weight of their stares pressing against her skin. But Cale didn't flinch, didn't let go. One of the elders stepped forward, an older woman named Marin, with silver streaked through her dark hair. Her gaze flicked between them, sharp and assessing. "Alpha," she said carefully. "We weren't sure you'd return. I said I would. And the Luna?" Lila stiffened, but Cale's hand tightened around hers, grounding. "She's here. By choice." Marin's eyes shifted to Lila. "Is that true?" Lila lifted her chin. forcing herself to hold the elder's gaze. Yes, the ceremony was interrupted. I called it off, Cale said, his voice calm but edged with steel, the moment she left. There won't be another until she's ready. Murmurs rose from the crowd, uncertain and uneasy, and Marin's expression didn't change. The pack needs a Luna, Cale. The bond has to be completed. It will be. His jaw set. When she asks. Not before. And if she doesn't? Then we move forward without it. He stepped closer to Marin, his presence filling the space between them. I'm not forcing this. Not on her. Not on anyone. Marin studied him for a long moment. Then her gaze shifted back to Lila, softer this time. You understand what you're asking for, girl? To delay the bond is to leave the pack vulnerable, to leave yourself unprotected. Lila's pulse quickened, but she didn't look away. I'm not asking to delay it forever. Just until I'm sure. Sure of what? That it's mine. Her voice steadied. That I'm choosing it. Not just falling into it because everyone expects me to. Silence stretched between them, heavy and taut. Then Marin nodded, slow and deliberate. Fair enough. Relief flooded through Lila's chest, and she felt Cale exhale beside her. Marin turned back to the crowd. The Alpha has spoken. We respect his choice. And hers. The murmurs didn't disappear, but they softened, and the crowd began to disperse, drifting back toward their morning routines. Marin lingered a moment longer, her gaze sharp. Don't make us wait too long, she said quietly. The bond doesn't like to be ignored. Then she was gone, and Lila was left standing in the clearing with Cale, her hand still in his, the sunrise warm against her back. That went better than I expected, she admitted. Marin's tough, but she's fair. He glanced down at her, his expression soft. You did well. I didn't do anything. You stood your ground. His thumb brushed over her knuckles again, a habit she was starting to recognize. That's everything. She smiled, small and tentative. So what now? Now? He tugged her gently toward the main lodge. Now we eat breakfast. You rest. And I prove to you that courting doesn't have to be terrifying. Courting? She repeated, the word strange on her tongue. Yeah. His grin was crooked and devastatingly warm. I'm told it involves flowers, maybe poetry, possibly terrible attempts at cooking. She laughed despite herself. You can't cook? Not even a little. This is going to be a disaster. Probably. He stopped at the door, turning to face her, and his eyes were bright and honest. But it'll be ours. Her chest ached, warm and full. Okay. Okay? Yeah. She stepped closer, rising onto her toes to press a soft kiss to his jaw. Let's try. His arm came around her waist, careful and sure, and he held her close for just a moment, his breath warm against her hair. Thank you, he murmured. For what? For giving me a chance. She pulled back, her fingers tracing the edge of his collar. Don't make me regret it. I won't. His voice was a promise. I swear. And when they walked into the lodge together, his hand still in hers, the bond, humming quiet and sure between them. Lila let herself believe him. Just a little. Should their story end here, or would you like to see what happens after sunrise? Let me know below. Your comments decide if part 2 gets written. And if you enjoyed this story, a quick like really helps more people find it. Consider subscribing so you don't miss the journey.